So many HVAC shops focus on how many systems they install each month, but the real value of an install is the service relationship that follows. And so here in this video, this KPI shows whether install customers are actually coming back for maintenance and repairs. So by tracking this metric, owners can see if installs are creating long-term revenue or just one-time jobs. And so here we have a data set, and if you want this data set, there is a link to download it with all my formulas, all my solutions and everything. But what we have here is, pretty much the service date and then the customer ID. And then we have install versus service. And then here we have the revenue. And this is what we're going to use. You can do this off of gross profit as well. But essentially what we're going to calculate is out of all of the customers here, how many of them got an install? And then if they got an install, on the date of the install, how much revenue and jobs were generated after the install date. So it has a couple steps. So bear with me. It's going to take just a little while to set this up. But what we need to do is we need to get this first. So this is a unique list of any customer that got an install and the date of when they got the install. And then here is a future service. So in other words, is there a row with the customer number, the customer ID, and a date that is after the, this date, after the 6th, after the 9th? And then if so, sum that. And then this is just giving me the end of the month. And the reason for that is so we can put them into cohorts, right? So we have the January 24 cohort. And this goes all the way out to the end of 27. And so this is dummy data, but I work with multiple HVAC shops, and so I'm familiar with what the data looks like and how to structure it. Okay, so let's get started. So step one, here with customer ID and event date, we want to get any of these here where this is an install. And so the way we do that, I'll just type it out here. Date and then customer. So equals, we want to filter. So we want to filter out any of these two, and make sure you're highlighting the table here. Any of these two rows. We want any row from these two columns where this equals install. And we have that right here. So this is filtering out the data service where the customer got the install. So it tells you when they got an install. So now I'm going to copy and paste this as values. So Control-Shift-V. But now what we can do is we can pretty much calculate all the stuff we need. So let me just copy these over here and see what I called these. So just future service and then revenue. Okay. So future service is more like a question. Did they receive a future service? So what we have to do now is we can count if S. So now we want to count the number of rows that have a customer ID of 0563 and a date that is after January 6th, right? For that first one. So count if S here. So we have customer ID, comma, and then it's right here, comma, and then we want the event date, comma, and then now we're going to do quotations greater than, quotations and this. And so you get 1, which means that yes, they did. Let's see if there's any. So you have some zeros here, right? So that tells you that now we can calculate the other KPIs, like essentially how many ones versus how many zeros based on the cohort. But before we do that, let's knock out the revenue. So it's pretty much the same formula, but instead of counting, we're going to sum, and we're going to sum gross revenue. And you can, of course, I mean, it's probably better if you do gross profit, but we're just going to sum gross revenue. And then from here is the same thing. So customer ID, comma, and then what was it, cell B3? No, D3. Right here, you can see the blue behind. Excel gets a little bit weird, and it hides the cells here. And also when you're clicking here, make sure you're not, you see how like the letter B, here, let me just move this out of the way. You see how the letter C is highlighting? Don't do that. Like right here, you see the mouse change. Like that's how you can click on the table. But anyway, so event date and then comma. And then now again, we want quotations greater than quotations. Oh, it's going to spit an error because when I click into the sheet, it just throws it out there. It gives you the sheet name. So, and this is cell C3 right here, right? And so now you have the revenue. And it makes sense that it's 0 because there were no future jobs. Okay, so we have that. Actually, I don't want to delete that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call this month. And what we want is we want the cohort of this right here, meaning we want the end of the month for each of the months shown here. So in month, the cell, and then 0. And you can see here that this is the end of the month here, right? The 31st. And then you can see, I guess 24 was a leap year. And so you can see how it's breaking this out. Okay, so now we have these columns done. And so now what we want is we want to create this table here. And then I'm going to throw this in there just to roll it up by years to show you another way to do it. But this chart here is off of this data. But this year column here is needed for this. So let me just copy this over just to save a couple seconds. So now what we need is we need a unique list of the month, a unique list of the cohorts here. And we have that. And what I'm not going to do, because this is sorted, but just wrap yours, if you're using this data set, perfect. I mean, there's a link to download it, like I said before. But if you're doing this in your own data set, you want to make sure this is sorted sequentially, right? You want to make sure, January, February, March, April, May. And so you can just wrap that with the sort function. And then I'm going to just do the text function real quick. So text, and then the cell, and then 4 Ys, and make sure the Ys are in quotations. And that'll strip out the year. Okay, so now for new installs, what we want is we want to count the number of times this month is showing up here, right? So equals countFS, like you can just highlight the whole column here because it's not in a table. So how many times is January 31st, 24 in the data? And it's 5, these 5 here. And that's just the number of new installs, because if you remember in the very beginning, we took this only for installs. You double click there, get that. And then so now for repeat, what we're going to do is we're going to see how many times this is greater than 0, because a 0 means they never came back. But anything greater than 0 means they did come back. So countFS, so there's 2 criteria. The first one is this month here, comma, and then the next one is this, and then now we can just do quotations greater than 0, quotations, and then you get 5. So in other words, 100% of the customers for new installs for January 24 came back in the data set. And what you'll notice is that it's a pretty high percentage, but it drops off, right? And it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, I create these data sets to be as accurate as possible. I do make mistakes, of course, but I try to make them accurate. But this makes sense because they haven't had time to come back, as to where these have had time, right? It's been multiple years and they do have time. So then now for the retention, or for the service revenue, we can sum, and we're going to sum this column here, comma, where the month, comma, is here. And now we have how much service revenue, or how much post-install service revenue was generated by, people who got an installation. And then retention's super simple. It's just this divided by this. And you're going to see 100 sometimes, and then you're going to see it drop off pretty fast. And that's why whenever I do the chart, I will do it a little bit differently. So for the chart, what I'm going to do is highlight this. What I'll do is I'll highlight everything, and I'll show you how to change it. And then we can do new installs if you want, or you can do, any of these 2 columns. But at the end of the day, we care about revenue, right? So highlight, hold down Control, and then highlight those 2 columns. Go to Insert, and then Recommended, and then All Charts Combo. And then here for Install Customer Retention, just click the secondary axis. And so now we have the chart, but what I'm going to do, now that you see like the purple box and the blue box, I'm going to take this up to 26. Because if not, you're going to see a huge drop off. It's going to be confusing. It's like, hey, we're on fire here. But that's not really true. It's just they haven't had time to catch up. So one more thing is I want to get the title. I'm trying to copy this title here and then put it here. And then I will copy the headings for this. And then I'll just put it here. Okay, so for the year, we need a unique list of this. So again, we've done this 3 times now. So now we have the unique list. I'm going to just copy and paste his values. So for new installs versus repeat versus retention, and versus revenue, I'm just going to sum if s new installs, comma, where the year, comma, is here. And then here, I'm going to do the same thing, sum if s, repeat, comma, month, comma, here. Right? And then, well, that didn't work. What am I doing wrong? Oh, because it's not month, it's year. And then you can double click, and now you can see the retention here equals this divided by this, right? And you can see it drops off a cliff right here. But again, that's because the data hasn't been, you haven't had time to catch up. Again, the dummy data, but if you do this KPI with your data sets, it will look very similar. Okay, and then revenue, again, super simple. Sum if s here, comma, year, comma, here, and then you have the revenue. And then you'll see the revenue also sort of drops off. Right. The thing that's interesting here is you still made a lot of revenue, but you had a huge drop, right, versus the prior year. So you're selling more expensive systems is what that means. Okay, that is essentially how you create this KPI. Pretty useful in the sense that once you can figure out, revenue and even better gross margin, you can factor that into your CPA, your cost to acquire a customer. This is the customer loyalty section, but if you go back to the marketing section of the book or of the videos, or the sales section, then you'll be able to see like, what is my cost to get a new customer? It's like, oh, it's $1,000. I'm making $1,100 gross margin, right? It's like that extra, $1,100 is not enough to cover things. But if I am in the game long enough, they're going to come back as long as, you offer good services. But anyways, that is it for this video. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email, questions@databoards. If you want this file here, there's a link to download. It has all my formulas, all the charts, all that good stuff. Just click the link or shoot me an email. And also if you need some help, getting your data structured or getting the KPIs in from your data or out of your data, then there's also a link to my calendar, or you can just shoot me an email. Either one of those works. But yeah, that is it for this one, and I will see you in the next lesson.